Hey guys, it's your boy Trafotin, the guy who can't talk about news on time. Corporations and software are always collecting data about you, most of the time covertly. Time to grab those tinfoil hats, because today is the day to raise our pitchforks and get ready to rumble. But hold on, before you go light your torches, I want to take a step back and take a real-world look at what telemetry actually is. Developers put their software out to the world, and they want to learn more about ways they can improve it. Logging systems exist in most programs, and this can help developers do things like diagnose crashes or find potential issues within their software. Activities can also be logged so that developers know the general uses of their software or sub-uses of their software. Sounds pretty innocuous, right? And that's what we're going to try to unpack today. Not all telemetry is ethical, but what have most people decided is the morally sound way to fix problems and collect information. And I'm going to be going through a few examples of what we can learn about what makes ethical telemetry. We're going to be diving into privacy policy, source code, and real-world examples of what this looks like. Let's talk about one of the biggest offenders of your privacy, Windows 10. Windows telemetry can't be turned off, and you only get two options, full and basic. No matter what version of Windows you use, the GUI will not give you a way to deal with the telemetry. Now, you could use Group Policy Editor, but in order for you to get Group Policy Editor, you need to have Windows Pro or higher, and you need to pay through the nose to get it. Telemetry collected with Windows appears to be useful, but it's ruined by Microsoft's implementation and decision-making.
Like that design aesthetic our customers need and want, all our customers, everyone.
Users are never given the proper means to consent because the only prompt they get is to agree to the Windows Terms of Service and accept that Windows is just going to collect information from them. Arguably, Windows telemetry is way worse than what you'll see in other places because the Windows team continues to smear their name by over-relying on siphoning off user information from Windows. And in addition to collecting all of your information, they continue to rip out existing features in Windows 11 based on that telemetry. All of this is compounded by the fact that Microsoft sells your information to advertisers through the Bing advertising network. And all of this has been commonplace since the Sinofsky era of Windows. But wait, even if you use Windows Pro, you still can't turn off the telemetry. The only way to avoid it is to get a Windows Education or Enterprise license. In order to get the license, you need to contact a Microsoft sales rep and give Microsoft business relevant and probably accurate information. And then you need to pay for volume licensing or a subscription fee so you can activate Windows. Most of the time, which is going to involve you hosting an Azure Active Directory server. And then you can go into group policy and turn the telemetry off. Or you could just take the easy route and say, screw Microsoft, I'm not using Windows.
That's enough!
Windows is the worst of the bunch, but let's say a program lets you turn off the telemetry. And I mean they offer you a checkbox or something in the settings that lets you turn it off. You could, of course, trust them, but as always, we need to operate with the distrust but verify, so that way we know what's actually happening. And let's take one of my favorite examples, Visual Studio Code. If I haven't already, I hope I've drilled into your skull that Microsoft is one of the most evil, privacy invasive companies on the planet. So because Microsoft is evil, obviously that means VS Code is evil. And indeed, at a glance, when you review the documentation for VS Code is subject to Microsoft's privacy policy. Yes, the same legalese privacy policy that lets Microsoft collect all of your information about Windows and market it off to advertisers. But there's a few important differences between VS Code and Windows. VS Code includes a toggle for users to turn off telemetry collection. Unlike Windows, this toggle fully disables VS Code's telemetry. Now, the keen-eyed keyboard warriors among you are going to pounce on this and say, but aha, there's no way you could know that. But there is, dear commenter. It's this thing called GitHub, you know, where they publish almost all of their source code, including the source code for the stuff that collects telemetry about you. But the backend for VS Code's extensions is proprietary. Look, if you don't trust VS Code to track your extensions and give your information to Microsoft and proprietary frontend, it's simple. Don't use VS Code. But I think we need to be fair about VS Code and say, because we know and can examine VS Code source code, we know that when you uncheck the box in the telemetry menu, we know that because the box is unchecked, they are not collecting telemetry about you. And I'd imagine that extreme skeptics don't trust this even when they uncheck the box. But consider that VS Code is the #1 IDE for developers, and some of whom have to be savvy enough to read the source code and make an entire fork to rip all of Microsoft out of it. Wouldn't some of them type an angry message on Twitter and Mastodon that VS Code is spying on everyone even if the box is unchecked? Come on. Use your noggin. Who knew that if you use an online service in a product made by Microsoft, or anyone for that matter, you'd have to trust them not to do anything bad? What a concept, right? Let's talk about the most spicy one, Ubuntu. Ubuntu has garnered a long history of being called spyware, starting with the famous Richard Stallman and the Electronic Frontier Foundation, because the Amazon search integration in the Unity desktop with Ubuntu 12.04. However, Ubuntu suffers not from what they're doing, but they've been dragging their reputation through the mud for years, which makes it difficult for people to trust them. Ubuntu removed the Amazon searching from Unity, but continued to include an Amazon icon that would redirect people with referral links, you know, just like the links that you click in the description of this video. The problem is, because of the Amazon incident, where any search that you did in Unity would be sent to Amazon, people have always held that against Ubuntu, and any of the visible Amazon integration was only removed after Ubuntu 20.04. This reputation may have also damaged another part of Ubuntu, and that's the introduction of telemetry in Ubuntu 18.04. Now, this is where we get into the realm of what kind of telemetry is harmful versus what kind of telemetry is benign. Canonical's developers have always been open to what kind of information is being collected. Typically, it's things like lots of hardware information or the general area of the world you're in. In practice, Canonical collecting this telemetry is purely to improve Ubuntu with some fairly common settings that can't be used to identify people because of how impersonal it is. Unlike what you'll see with a lot of other programs on Windows. When poor Will Cook of Canonical announced this on the mailing list, of course, because of Ubuntu's reputation, people piled in to complain online about how Ubuntu is continuing on a dark, slippery slope, even though this data is largely harmless. But why? It's because of the continued integration of Amazon up through Ubuntu 20.04 and the baggage of the Amazon instance, and this seeming tone-deaf response to how people responded to their privacy. Even though it's pretty clear to disable Ubuntu's telemetry by unchecking a box, people still to this day get angry. But once again, because Ubuntu is open source, we can verify that unchecking this box does as it claims, and disabling Ubuntu's other data collection can be done effectively because Canonical open sources everything. But we need to ask ourselves, because of an incident like this, trust is a very hard thing to earn back. And because of the Ubuntu 12.04 troubles, Canonical learned this firsthand. But let's wrap this up. I've spoken an entire video about how telemetry functions, real-world examples of what telemetry looks like, and trying to understand all of it, but how can normal people learn from this? What is someone going to do when they want to protect their privacy? And if you want to help the developer, and you feel like that you are helping them by providing them the telemetry, that's great. And by all means, provide them your data. It's your prerogative. Just make sure that you made the choice and you're conscious of this choice and that it's very clear cut to the user. On the other hand, I am an extremist when it comes to privacy. We have seen studies from journalists and from academic institutions about how easily information can be de-anonymized. Now, in the case of a lot of more benign software telemetry, the information is largely impersonal, but I am taking no chances. I want all the help I can get, and that includes turning all of it off. The major thing that I look for when I analyze telemetry isn't just what kind of data is collected, because I think people focus on that too much, but I also want to focus on the methodology itself. If you use a service that uses third-party analytics, ask yourself, is there a privacy-respecting, but also a more usable and scalable solution that could replace those needs? If your software is using a third party to collect information about you, that means in addition to the developer, you need to trust that third party because that third party also gets your information. Oh, and by the way, if you have to resort to using an application firewall or a DNS blocker to claim up telemetry, even if you are given no opt-out, maybe you do need to consider looking for an alternative, but just do whatever works within your means. The only thing that I ask is that you remain realistic about what telemetry actually is, what kind of telemetry is harmful, and is the telemetry being collected about you done in an ethical way where the choice and the data collected is very clear to the user. And I'm going to leave it at that. So why don't you go leave a like on this video? If you leave a like on this video, you're gonna send me a little bit of telemetry that props me up in the YouTube algorithm. Also, why don't you go hit that subscribe button and send me even more telemetry about you so I can send telemetry to you? Alright, thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time. Have a great rest of your week.